senior leaders from the administration have toured areas impacted by the storm, met with residents, small business owners, and thanked volunteers and first responders for all of their efforts. The President approved the federal government covering costs associated with the response and recovery efforts and has ensured that this is a whole of government response. There are over a dozen interagency partners to ensure that we're successful in providing relief and support to individuals across impacted areas. In total, more than 5,300 federal personnel are on the ground supporting the ongoing response, and they'll continue to work to ensure that people have the support that they need. You'll hear today about how we're working with governors, mayors, and local officials to respond to the storm, and from FEMA about their continued efforts. Before I hand the program to our first speaker, I know that we have a number of small business owners on the call. So I want to particularly mention that the Small Business Administration is providing financial relief to small business owners, homeowners, and renters in impacted areas. This includes long-term, low-interest loans to repair and replace physical property, as well as financing to help overcome temporary revenue losses. We encourage you to reach out and work with your regional SBA office on ways to support your business. Finally, we know that despite all of these efforts, there's more to be done. That's why the President wrote to congressional leaders requesting additional resources for critical relief programs, including SBA's disaster loan program. We call on Congress to act immediately to restore this funding because we can't wait for them to return to reinstate this support. With that, I will turn the program over to Tom Perez, Senior Advisor to the President and Director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. Tom.
Thanks, Jenny, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Perez, as Jenny said, and I have the privilege of working as a Senior Advisor to the President and with governors, mayors, county officials, and so many others in local government. And we have spent the last 10 days on the phone with county, city, state leaders who've been impacted by Hurricane Helene. And as both the President and Vice President have stated, we are going to be with you. As Jenny just said, we're going to have your back, not just today and yesterday, but tomorrow, next year, for however long it takes for us to get everything done. As you know, the President approved major disaster declarations within hours of his receipt of those requests. This whole of government approach that Jenny has outlined has many, many dimensions to it. And the President has directed every team to make sure that every available resource can be provided as fast as possible to communities so that they can rescue, they can recover, and they can rebuild. And we obviously continue to prioritize life-saving and life-sustaining response efforts in impacted communities. And I'll give you one very concrete example. There are 1,500 active duty military deployed in and around the western counties of North Carolina, assisting in rescue, recovery, and rebuilding efforts. The challenges everywhere were very, very unspeakable, but in particular in many corners of western North Carolina, we had to deploy active duty military to get to that last mile so we can find every person in every home. That's what we're doing. We've deployed helicopters. We have over 60 Starlink satellites because so many people have lost the ability to communicate. And these Starlink satellites are enabling us to get back in communication with folks. Over 4.5 million people in all the affected states lost power because we were pre-positioning assets before the storm. We were able to react very quickly with teams of line people from, frankly, across the country who came forward to help in that process. And as a result, we've been able to restore electricity to over 75% of those who have lost it. We still have more work to do, but we are continuing those efforts. Thousands of personnel from across the federal workforce, again, were deployed, and we work day in and day out with our state-led response teams from across the region. Administrator Criswell has been down in the affected regions throughout, leading efforts, working together with our state and local partners. And as Jenny alluded, we are now preparing for Hurricane Milton, which, as you know, is currently a Category 5 storm. As President Biden noted, he approved 100% federal cost share for emergency response activities in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. In plain English, what this means is the federal government will cover 100% of the cost associated with response and recovery. That's really, really important. Things like debris removal, first responders, search and rescue, shelters, mass feeding. And speaking of mass feeding, FEMA has shipped over 15.6 million meals, more than 13.9 million liters of water, 157 generators, and more than 500,000 tarps to the region. To date, more than $20 million in individual assistance has been provided to thousands of survivors who've been affected by Hurricane Helene across the region, including over 6 million in North Carolina and over 7 million in Florida to survivors. And this is helping people pay for essential items like food, water, diapers, baby formula, and other emergency supplies. We have been putting people up in shelters because so many people are without a place to sleep. And this is just a small example of, again, the whole government enterprise that is taking place. And we are going to continue to be there day in and day out. Jenny mentioned the impact on small business, and our SBA has been there from day one, and they're going to continue to be there to help business owners get back on your feet. And we know you will. Moments like this, as unspeakably tragic as they are, we also see the best of America. So many people have stepped up and volunteered in their communities. So many people have contributed money to help in the rescue efforts. So many acts of heroism in communities across the affected regions. And we will continue to see those efforts, and we will continue to see the federal efforts moving forward. And that is why we are going to get through this. I am confident that we can. I know there's more to do, and we're going to continue to surge resources, including food, water, communications, and equipment that will help save lives. Our nation has your back. The Biden-Harris administration has your back. We are working with governors of all parties. This is not a moment for talking about politics. This is a moment to save people and bring communities together. And we appreciate the work we've done with the governors of Georgia and South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, all across the region, continuing to work in partnership. And that is what we will do for as long as it takes to get this done. So thank you again to everyone on this call. Thank you to the local elected officials, many of whom, as I look at the list, either myself or people on our teams here at the White House have spoken to. You have our number. We're available 24/7. And to our business leaders on this call, same thing. Never hesitate to call. If you are able to access a phone and you want to talk to FEMA, we're going to turn to FEMA here in a moment. Their helpline is 800-621-3362, or you can visit also disasterassistance.gov. That is disasterassistance.gov. So again, our condolences to everyone. The work continues, and the work will continue for as long as it takes. Thank you so much, and I will turn it back over to Jenny, I believe.
Thank you, Tom. And we do want to spend the majority of the time taking some of the questions that you all submitted. But first, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Justin Knighton, who serves as the Associate Administrator. Justin?
Thank you very much. First, a huge thanks to you, Mr. Perez and Ms. Kaplan, for hosting today's call and creating space to have this very urgent conversation. And thank you to the White House and all of our federal agencies who've been leaning all the way forward in this time. Good afternoon. My name is Justin Angel Knighton, the Associate Administrator of FEMA's Office of External Affairs. I want to first start off by saying that it's with our deepest condolences with all the families who have lost loved ones in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, who are struggling with the reality of the impacts of their homes, their businesses, communities, and seeing so much destruction. What's also true about FEMA is that we are here. We're going to stay here. We're going to be with you. We're going to keep this work going, and we're going to be embedded in communities, all the communities that have been impacted. And what keeps us motivated are the people in communities who need our help. Many of us are disaster survivors ourselves, having been and experienced other events over the years, which is why we're here doing this work. So we know what it's like. We are here with you, and we're going to keep doing everything possible and not stop until you're getting what you need to jumpstart your recovery. What's also true is that we've been working, as Mr. Perez mentioned, across the entire federal family on this response. We've been working to make sure that every federal agency is leaning forward. As mentioned, we are working in direct partnership with the Department of Defense, with personnel on the ground. We're working with agencies who are working across lifelines to make sure that we are actively working quickly to get you what you need to get back onto your journey of recovery. As part of that, and what I'm sure many of you have seen in the press, the reality of rumors and misinformation that have been out there are very challenging. And more than that, they are actually having a direct negative impact on people. It's causing confusion, it's causing chaos, and people aren't able to get the help that they need because they're seeing so much information that is not true. We need your help to make sure that people have access to the accurate information, because we are working in direct shoulder-to-shoulder in-line relationship with our governors, local elected officials, members of Congress, full federal family, non-governmental partners, private sector, with one priority in mind: people on the ground who need our help. And I need your help to help us make sure that that messaging is clear, accurate, and timely. And we have a website that we set up on FEMA.gov specifically about rumor response to help us make sure if there's any question or misinformation, or you're just not sure if what you heard is true, go to that page to make sure you're validating it with the truth. And with that, as we transition, I know this call is primarily focused on Helene and what we're doing on the ground regarding Helene. We do know, and we are all tracking, there is another threat on the horizon with Hurricane Milton. This will be a catastrophic event. This will be something that will require all of us at every level to work quickly, to take action now, to make sure that people are safe. And so my call to action for all of you is that if you are in the path of the storm, please take evacuation orders seriously. If you're asked to evacuate, evacuate. If you're in the path of the storm or not, but you have connections to those who are, help us send the message that the evacuation is urgent. We know that trusted messengers come from many different forms: government, non-government, your neighbor, a person of faith, a coworker. And so we need every voice out there helping us to lift up these urgent orders to make sure that people are getting to safety before that storm makes landfall. Really happy to be here to answer questions, to get you what you need, and to have this be the start of an ongoing conversation that we can have to make sure that FEMA is answering questions for you and getting the information that you need to support the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And I know also from our many colleagues that your disability integration advisors are on the ground and active in making sure that the resources you have are broadly accessible. Let's turn to some of the questions provided by our participants. The first is a relatively simple but really important one. What are the steps that people should take if they were impacted by the flooding from the hurricane?
Absolutely. Important question. First and foremost is to listen to local officials. Conditions in areas may still be dangerous, and everyone in those affected areas should follow the instructions from local officials to stay safe from post-storm risks. People designated in designated counties of the path of the storm should do the first thing that we always advocate for in the recovery process if you're in that place, which is to call FEMA's assistance, or to apply rather for FEMA assistance in 3 ways. One, by online, visiting disasterassistance.gov, calling 1-800-621-3326, or through the FEMA app. We also know there's still connectivity challenges, and so we are growing our on-the-ground footprint with disaster assistance survivor teams to support in-person registration. Everyone's journey to recovery is different, and the first step is to apply for assistance because we recognize that everyone's needs will vary, and this assistance process will help to diagnose and tailor the assistance that's available to meet you where you are, given your unique situation. You may recover. Your recovery may look different from your friends or neighbors, but our dedicated staff is here to ensure that we can help you navigate what those needs are.
Thank you. And relatedly, it may be some of the same sites, but where do people look for information about shelter and meals? And if you don't mind, if you could repeat the phone number again, because I know sometimes these websites are confusing. It's complicated to apply for assistance. If you wouldn't mind just restating the phone number as well.
Absolutely. The phone number is 1-800-621-3326. I'm going to say it one more time. 1-800-621-3326. Happy to repeat it again later for those who join the call later to make sure that folks get it. The website is disasterassistance.gov. And then there's always the FEMA app available as well.
Thank you. And is that also where folks should go if they want information about meals and shelter?
No, although you can go there to start the process. We actually have different resources available for food and shelter. I would say that the first and foremost, most important thing is to, again, use the direction given by local officials who are going to have the real-time, real information about street corners and locations where food and water is being distributed. These things are going to be dynamic, and sometimes there isn't going to be a list that exists today that will be the same list as tomorrow, because local crews are in some cases trying to meet people where they are and move as quickly as they can into different communities. And so I don't want to set false expectations around where people can go, because it is such a dynamic footprint on the ground where people are moving fast to provide help. But there are 2 sources that I think are a really good starting point. One is FEMA.gov/Hurricane Helene. This is a FEMA website that is devoted specifically to this disaster. And on this webpage, you're going to be able to find links to other government sources, local government, state government, that has information on those specific asks for food, shelter, et cetera. And so that is a good place to go. A second place to go to help you get the immediate needs that you are looking for is through the Red Cross. The Red Cross has a program that will help connect you if you are missing a loved one or aren't sure where they are. They have a program to help connect you with that missing loved one. It's also a program that will help connect you to where there's a nearby shelter or food. And so they're another good resource on the ground to provide help. And there's also a phone number that I'll repeat twice and make sure that we're following up with all of you in the White House to make sure that this can get out to everyone after as well. And that phone number is 1-800-RED-CROSS. It's 1-800-RED-CROSS. The number specifically is 1-800-733-2767. That's 1-800-733-2767. FEMA has shipped over 15 million meals, over 13 million liters of water, and 157 generators and 500,000 tarps. And we are continuing to operate with our other federal partners, DoD and others, to get more support to the field. But those are the 2 sites, FEMA.gov, specific to Hurricane Helene, and the Red Cross for the actual on the ground where things are.
Thank you very much. I just have time for one or two more questions. I know that you represent one of the agencies in this interagency effort, but wanted to understand what you all are doing kind of on the ground to ensure that civil rights are being protected and that we're supporting those with disabilities.
Absolutely. We have disability integration teams who are on the ground embedded with us at the federal level, with our state partners on the ground, to make sure that we are thinking about, not only thinking about, but we're prioritizing civil rights and the needs people have to access accurate, clear, and quick information that meets them where they are, and all the other processes that are a priority in the civil rights space, to make sure that we are working, again, hand in hand with each state to make sure that people are getting the support that they need, and that they're being protected, and that they're safe. This is true with our disability integration teams that are doing very much the same work, but through the lens of the equities of people who have a disability or access functional needs, to make sure that when we start setting up different centers for people to come get assistance or to ask questions, that we're being as accessible, we are being completely accessible, and we are providing all the language accessibility that communities need. That when we're thinking about the distribution of different resources and support, we're doing so equitably through the lens of where people need to make sure that we're helping all people in a way that meets them where they are. So we have these two teams on the ground right now and continuing moving forward.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of people on the line who may have been personally impacted or may not have been, but who want to help. So how would you direct regular citizens or faith-based organizations or others? What is the best advice you can give them for ways that they can lend assistance?
First of all, we know in these moments, and Mr. Perez mentioned this at the top, as did you, Ms. Kaplan, but we see the best of humanity in these moments. We see people who are coming to the forefront to step in and step out to help other people. And that is what makes this country so phenomenally rich and dynamic. And we know that that is so true in a disaster. What is also true is that we can't have people deploy themselves or to act outside of an organization that can give them the structure and the guidance that they need to be helpful and to stay safe. And so our recommendation is, if you want to be helpful, and if that's in the form of you're able to volunteer and help in person, if you're able to give a donation of any kind, whether that's cash or a product, is to contact an organization that you trust, and the organizations that are on the ground right now, those voluntary active organizations that do work in disaster, to make sure that that work and that support and those donations are able to be put to good use in a way that will be operationalized to help the field, that keeps you safe, that keeps the situation on the ground that is very dynamic, still moving in a way that will help people. And if there are any questions about where to find these organizations, I have two sources for you. One is to contact the NVOAD organization, and their website is nvoad.org. That's NVOAD.org. This is an organization that oversees and works with all the disaster-oriented groups that are doing great work now and moving forward in disaster. If your organization is looking to support, and you are not an individual looking to support, and you want to be more involved the way that you're being involved already, you can contact us at FEMA, and we can help you navigate what that looks like. And so we have a team called the FEMA Voluntary Agency Liaison Team, and then we have an email address that you can contact. And again, we'll follow up to make sure that folks have it. But the email is FEMA-VAL, VAL, at FEMA.dhs.gov.
There will not be a test after for all of these websites, just in case you were getting concerned about that. We will make sure to send them around. And I think the final way, which many of you on the line have been doing, is, I know that we are receiving a lot of information, specific instances, stories, data, and we want to continue to do that. Is there also another official channel people should be sharing so that the resources that are allocated are the most appropriate and effective?
Absolutely. I think emailing what resources and work that you're already doing to that email that I gave for the VAL is a good place to send your updates or information to. We can help coordinate that. and answer any questions you may have. So we definitely want to make sure that as you're out in community doing work, that we are well coordinated. We always say that the only way to help people before, during, and after disaster is through a whole of community, whole of government approach. We can't do this alone. FEMA can't do this alone. The federal government can't do this alone. No one organization can do this alone. We are all in this moment working together. We need to continue working together and be coordinated, because it's going to take all of us to make sure that the people who've been impacted by Helene, and then soon the people who will be impacted by Hurricane Milton, are getting what they need from all of us coming together, working together. The point you raised about stories is so powerful. We know that the power of a story can motivate someone to take action beyond what we in government can do alone. If you have a story, especially if you are in the path of the storm of Helene, and you know what it's like to have experienced that catastrophe, you are some of the most influential people to help communicate why people need to take this upcoming storm seriously, to evacuate if they hear evacuation orders issued, and to make sure that they're getting themselves, their families, and their neighbors and their loved ones to a safe place. Because unfortunately for all of us, myself included, who've survived disaster, we know better than anyone the urgency of the moment when there's still time. And so please help us tell those stories, because you will quite literally save someone's life.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you to everybody who joined on the line. Again, we will send around resources and information. This has been incredibly helpful, and we encourage you to stay in touch with us in whatever way you possibly can. So thank you again for joining today, and warmest wishes to all of you as you recover.